his friends are going to be creating. One of the most important aspects of it he mentioned was to really create an opportunity for the artists to each speak about the importance of this medium and of this art form of hip hop. And he felt that you can hear their work on YouTube or on their in different ways, but really what has been lacking, at least for Talon, has been a forum of discussion where each of the artists can really talk about how they came to this and how important it is for them today as individuals, but also in the broader sense. So that's what we're going to do now. And I really don't have much to do. I just want to welcome Talon. Although I do have to do one thing, and that is to thank all the amazing sponsors that brought us all here together. As I mentioned before, the Greenfield Agricultural Center and the Natives at Penn, the Native American and Indigenous Studies Initiative here at Penn, SPEC, which is the student, what is it? What's the P? Performance and Events, okay. Student Performance and Events Committee, that makes sense. Drexel University, also the Student Center for Inclusion and Culture, the Du Bois College House, ICF, which is the Intercultural Fund, and the Penn Museum. I also want to personally thank Tina for all her help as well in getting us here together. So Talon, Ducheneaux, would you want to come up and get started? Do you want to invite everybody up together? Okay, thank you.
First of all, can I say that silence is really eerie? So allow me to sit for a second and ingest all of this right now. My name is Talon Ducheneaux. I'm a senior undergrad here. I'm a hip-hop performer myself. I recently just released a 51-track album that has gone on for free. I used to do basically, I just want to talk about myself really quick to kind of give context to the beautiful thing that's about to happen here and that's been happening. So I'm from South Dakota. I grew up on various reservations and other places on and around South Dakota. And part of it was due to something which shouldn't be exploited, but which also shouldn't be taken a blind eye to, which is the struggles that I went through, be it poverty, parental neglect, the non-expectation that I received in many places that I went when I initially thought about applying to Penn, for example. My guidance counselor asked if I should really consider that as a possibility. And now I'm here, graduated. But one of the things that really pushed me to do this and be where I am today, it wasn't only the few mentors that I had, it wasn't only the few people that I found in my life who cared, it was also art. This piece right here means so much to me because this is the first reason why I got into music. When I was young, being a nerd and playing video games, Bomberman Hero in particular, I fell in love with the game more so because of the soundtrack. I love the way that it never occurred to me that you could really make sounds that aesthetically mean something and that go in with something and blend together with something that we don't even think of, which is video games. People spend like a lot of time, and in any art form really. As I get into hip hop and rapping, my school didn't have any music department. I think we had a piano maybe somewhere, but no one was teaching you that. And so the way I chose to express myself and not really air out my parents or my family, but more so explain what I'm going through and what I'm feeling, was writing. And it got me through, even if I was talking about nothing, there was something about it that was really therapeutic to me and that made me just feel like something's gotta give, like that something is there given. instead of something's gotta give. And the thing that made it more real for me is when my cousin Zaina Jor actually recorded a little mixtape, and you know, he was rapping over 3-6 Mafia beats and saying crazy things, and my aunties were all upset about it. They were talking about, you know, the blasphemy he was using and the explicitness of his content. But I heard it and it made it real for me. I was like, maybe I can, you know, try that. And soon enough, I linked up with Zane, and you know, we were like plugging earbuds into microphone jacks on computers, trying to find a way to record. And he taught me to keep pushing like that. And after I kind of moved away from him and into a different reservation, because my family situation at home wasn't the best, I found out sometime later, after I finished my own first mixtape, that he had passed away before I could even show up. And that hit me heavy. I didn't really think about it. Like, I think part of me pushed it out of my brain and didn't accept it until way later. Until one day, on his 1-year memorial, my grandfather, Everett Harrison, he came up to me, and I thought he was gonna, at this point, I had released like 12 mixtapes, just, I couldn't stop for some reason. And he said to me, I expected him, you know, to do exactly what my aunties did, which was, you know, say you shouldn't be doing this, what you're saying is wrong. And instead, he looks at me and he says, "Do you have a song to perform today for Zane?" And I didn't. I didn't have a song. And I went home that day and I immediately wrote a song for him. And it was called "Rock the Microphone." And basically the lyrics went, "I don't got a place to call home, but for Zane I'm gonna rock the microphone. Don't got cash, just a messed up dome, but for Zane I'm gonna rock the microphone." To me it meant so much more than just those words. And I promised myself after that I would say something in my music, that I would mean what I say in my music, and I would say something with meaning in my music. So this art form means everything to me. Not just my own expression, but the people that I'm going to bring up here today. When I was growing up, these guys' music and their passions and their art that they put out to the world kept me alive. There were times where I was depressed and suicidal, living on the res, thinking of like contemplating suicide. And I would listen to Maniac the Supernatural's song "Tomorrow," which he said the exact same thing. I contemplated suicide so many times, and I connected to that. It wasn't, you know, someone saying to me, "You should do this" or "You should do that." It was just people coming together and saying, "This is what's here." And how we choose to approach it and how we choose to deal with it is up to us. And it's up to the way we present ourselves, and whether someone else agrees with that or not shouldn't matter. What matters is we put that art out there and that we at least talk about it. And that's kind of how I saw hip-hop and music and what it did for me. So with that, being that I received so much from it, I did a radio show here in Penn where, you know, I wanted to give back to these artists and show them that I care about them and their art, and I want them to shine. I want them to get noticed, because I believe that no art is worth not noticing. So I tried my best to give back as much as I could, and yearned for something more. And 2 years ago, I came up to Valerie DeCruz and Vanessa Ayu of the Greenfield Intercultural Center and Natives at Penn, and I said, it was off of a Facebook post. I said, I want to bring, you know, Frank Waln out here and perform. And Vanessa set up a meeting with Valerie just off that Facebook post, and Valerie said, well, you know, there's the All Ivy Native Conference, we can just host that. For some reason. But it wasn't. It was a lot of hard work. But, you know, when we finally got together and we did it, it was beautiful. Like, Frank and Jeff were there, and, you know, the transformation since then and the things that we sparked since then have been life-changing. You know, since then, Frank's gone on to do an MTV documentary. Jeff, we're going to talk about his transformations. The way I want to introduce Step 5 and the rest of these artists is not through telling you who they are and telling you, you know, what they represent. I want them to do that. So instead, we did all ID. I was kind of nervous because I didn't know Defi personally yet. He seemed cool over like internet, but you know, as internet people, you know, can just be like saying, "Dear Mr. Da da da," formality, like you can just be nice online, you know, or you can not be nice online, and then when you see people, it's two different things. Is what I'm saying. And when I met Defi in person, like, you know, he was just so approachable, and like there was this energy that I felt where it was just like love, and you know, we're just happy to be here, fam, and I'm so happy. Someone came up to him from Brown University and was like, "Hi, my name is such and such, and I just want to let you know I always wanted to go to your shows in Albuquerque, but I was too young, and it's crazy that I finally get to see you out here in Philadelphia." And I didn't know this at the time, but you know, Def was going through some things simultaneously, and it didn't show. Until he told me that next night, you know, what he was going through and some of the stuff back home, some of the stuff we all face individually and in our own ways. And, you know, some artists, you know, when things tragic happen to them in their lives, they stop doing what they're doing. But Def looked me in the eye and, you know, he was like, you know, this thing that's going on, it's healing. It's me approaching this, and it's me getting over this, and you know, instead he used it as a tool. So I'm very happy, grateful, and honored to introduce to you once again, Defi. Check, 1, 2. So first of all, again, I said I'm not gonna tell you guys who these guys are. I want them to do that. So could you kind of introduce yourselves to people, where you're from, who you are, etc.
Once again, my name is MC5 from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Represent the Ducheneaux Nation. Chief Rockers, Definition Rare, me, my best friend. Andrew Martinez, he goes by Wake Self. We came out here, yeah, all the way from Albuquerque. Has anybody ever been there before? Show of hands. Oh, nice, wow. That's what's up. Well, I feel just right at home right now. Where's the Christmas at? No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I'm an MC, I'm a beat maker, community activist as well. Just you know, here to represent my people, all people, and just rock the microphone for y'all in a few. I'm not sure what exactly we're going to talk about, but we had a discussion earlier yesterday, and it had to deal with self-expression and how it kind of relates to your well-being. In that discussion, we were talking about transformation and stuff. Somehow it got brought up by our friend Chris, and I think what he addressed earlier is like, yeah, I went through a transformation like 2 years ago. The interesting thing about the conversation was we were in the exact same room that 2 years ago, at the time, I found out that, you know, my girlfriend left me at the time, and there was an all-female audience right here. That's the only reason why I disclosed that information. But long story short, I got inspired coming out here 2 years ago by my man Frank Waln, cats like him, my good friend DJ Element from back home, representing the Tana Autumn tribe, and you know, cats like Superman. The brothers like that, MCs who represent the mic well for their people for the right reasons and for good cause, and you know, brothers like that inspired me to kind of like step back into, you know, what this is all really about. And at the time I was kind of drinking a lot and stuff, and just because I was a little down, but I put all that to the side behind me now, more focused on my craft and representing correctly. And so I just wanted to say thanks to Talon for bringing me out 2 years ago, Frank Waln too. Check, 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, yeah. And so just thanks to my brothers right there for being an inspiration for me too, and I feel like we all vibe and inspire each other. And my brother Wake's Self too has got me on the path of wellness of just eating correctly and stuff. So I think that's a big part. It was, as artists, we got to take care of ourselves, and so been taking that more seriously. So yeah, that's. My name is Chris. Also Mike Pizza. That's how you pronounce my name. Thank you.
Go get another one.
Since then, I've been over a year and almost a year and a half almost sober, so it feels great.
And you know, what for you personally, what attracted you not only to, you know, just hip hop, but music in general? You know, what got you into this art form that, you know, brought us here today?
I'd probably say my mom started me off real young. She said, like, when I was, you know, she'd feel me kicking when she was listening to music. I was raised off a lot of music. When I got out of the womb, my mom said I'd be laying there, like, in my fetal position like this, and the beat would come on, Michael Jackson or something. I'd just be nodding my head already. So that's kind of how I got started right there. And I got to give a lot of props to two musical teachers back home, Phil Thomas and Paul Magnuson from Shiprock High School area. They really were cool with everybody, and you know, they had a great music program. I joined band as a percussionist and got down with poetry through my other poetry teacher, John Kelly. And at the same time, I started out as a dancer first, a b-boy and a popper. So John Kelly, our own poetry teacher, was from New York, and he'd actually break with us. So that was like, felt really cool, and that's kind of how I first started getting into hip hop in school, out of school. It was a lot of friends who kind of brought me into it too. First time I seen Beat Street, I got really addicted to hip hop right after that. And I mean, I was born in '85, so I wasn't around back then at all, but it was, you know, watching on a VHS, seeing Beat Street, you're like, whoa, this is still dope, this is cool. And so I guess we were far away from the root, from where hip hop, I guess, started historically, but you know, we just related and felt exactly the same as they did, I guess, because we were oppressed people too. We didn't have too much to do back on the reservation. It has its challenges, you know, you can either play basketball or, you know, get into school or maybe not. So a lot of hip hop practitioners that I was with back then, you know, kind of stopped doing hip hop or being hip hop because, you know, substance abuse and other things like that. So, you know, the reservation has its challenges, but hip hop was my way of like transcending all of that and getting to where I am today.
And it's interesting too, you talk about, you just talked about kind of not seeing the things that we see as old as actually being that old. It's still there. And I think that connects to a lot of other things, you know, with the kind of voice that gets put into history and how we kind of tend to distance ourselves away from things, be them tragic or great. We tend to think of them as older than they actually are, or farther away from us because of that. So that's a really interesting thing that you pointed out. And with your origins and stuff came the other half of your group, Definition Rare, Wake Self. And it was interesting, like Cinnamon kind of spoke on it earlier, but you know, I was sitting in my room and I was getting ready to go to class, I think, and I get a phone call, and it was Def's number. We already had kind of, you know, the gist of what was going to happen, and you know, Def, these are how humble these guys are, that's why I say this. He was like, hey fam, you know, we're excited to be there, do you mind if Wake Self kind of comes up and performs a bit? You know, he said he'd pay for his own plane and stuff, but would that be an issue or anything like that? And I was like, why would I say no to that? Like, it was kind of funny, like, you know, so I was like, of course, like, I just want to meet the guy even, like, I've been listening to his music for so long, and I played him on my show and everything, and, you know, and it was another thing of, you know, meeting someone in person, and then, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know if you're going to click or not, but you go in there with kind of the, I kind of think of it as like an open soul, like, and, you know, sometimes you get hurt, but for me personally, I'm willing to risk that. And it paid off. When these guys came over and I met Wake, you know, we've just been vibing ever since. Like, you know, Wake's a really cool guy, and I'm super appreciative of him, you know, coming out in the way he did, and just showing us love in this way. So the next performer I want to bring up is Wake Self. Professor Styles himself. And where you feel Styles. There's water right there too if you need more Styles. They say Styles a lot, so I'm just trying to get with it.
Not as much as they do now, but
It's all Styles. We'll share Mike Styles. Okay. So, can you please first just introduce yourself to the people? How do you identify yourself? How do you, place yourself on this?
Hello, everybody. My name is Andy Martinez. I am of Mexican descent. My dad's parents came from, migrated from Mexico. His family, Aztec and Apache origins, and I grew up. They lived in Roswell. I don't know if you guys know about Roswell, Area 51. People always trying to joke with me, saying that I hop ship, like maybe maybe the crash site was really my birthplace. Styles. But there's this little area right by Roswell. It's called Hagerman. It's kind of like Little Mexico. That's where all my family lives. We grew up there. I was born in that area. Then we moved. My parents, they had a tough, like, their family was a really great family, but while they had like kids really young, so they was like struggling super hard. And I remember my dad. They always tells me stories, you know what I mean? And like my dad was going to college while they were living in a welfare house. And like when I was born, the water was like really bad in that area, like, you know what I mean? The plumbing and all that stuff was like super low budget, and I was born with like this crazy sickness, and I had to be in like quarantine for the first 6 months. And it's crazy because, now I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine. I eat healthy. I'm a big advocate of healthy eating, juicing. I'm vegan and gluten-free or whatever. And but to me, it's just like I see what my parents went through, you know what I mean? And it's real deep to me. My dad was like, my mom was like, your dad never slept, you know what I mean? He'd go to college, and then when he got home from college, he'd do his homework while he was watching YouTube while I took a little nap, you know what I mean? And I was like, man, it's deep right there. And then from there, we moved to Fort Wingate, which is on the reservation area right outside of Gallup, New Mexico. So I have this crazy background of kind of like growing up also in the reservation area. My dad works at a all-native school out there. And then we moved to Gallup later on, and it was kind of crazy. My family is a really great, strong family. In Gallup, the crime rate's kind of crazy. People be getting like beheaded by the gangsters and stuff. Like just last year, they found like people's like chopped up bodies in like different areas and stuff. And there was like a crack spot right up the street from my house. You know what I mean? Like, so when I hear rappers like rap about that stuff, I'm like, that's not nothing to glorify. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be rapping about that. Like, that's not like something that you want to be proud of, you know what I mean? Like that's something we had to live through, you know what I mean? Something we deal with, and the hip hop found us because, I say it found us because there's no way really to find hip hop out there, you know what I mean? Like where we're from, there's not as many opportunities. There's not like big hip hop shows going on all the time. There's not opportunities like that, until we created them. So we're very thankful to be where we're at, through all the things that we came through. And hip hop is really just helped us escape and helped us find ourselves and help us have a voice, So I'm very thankful to be here with y'all today.
Let's give another round of applause. And so just, as I asked Def, we had this conversation before, and when we kind of did a little panel a few days ago, just kind of talking about your guys' origins. What kind of got you interested, not only in this art form, but in music in general? Because I know, like, all you guys kind of extend beyond that in your, you know, and what you're interested in.
Man, I think it's, you know, I think it's in us. You know, the music is in us. It's part of our DNA. You know what I mean? It's our calling to do this. Not to sound all mystical or whatever, but you know, it feels like that sometimes. My dad has a really extensive like collection of music. He listened to a lot of great music, jazz and soul. You know what I mean? Like old school, like where hip hop. All the records that people sample to make hip hop, you know what I mean? That's what my dad listens to. And as well as like reggae, as well as like Jackson Brown, like some rock, you know what I mean? He showed me videos on the box way back in the day. I don't know if y'all remember, we ordered videos on the box. I don't know if anybody's that old school up in here, but but like, yeah, he showed me Tribe Called Quest. Bonita Applebaum was the first hip hop video I seen. Then after that, he was always playing like mixtapes and actual tapes, you know what I mean? Actual stop, record, you know what I mean? It's not like rappers like, oh, I put out a mixtape, you know what I mean? It's different, but and I remember hearing like Egyptian Lover, you know, I don't know if you guys know who that is, super old school hip hop, things like that just kind of brought me into this. I always loved hip hop, you know, since the beginning, but then I started writing poetry because I was seeing everything around me and kind of feeling like isolated where I lived. I had a lot of like depression as a child, you know, as he was touching on the subject, you know what I mean? Like, you know, dabbled in like self-mutilation and like crazy, you know what I mean? It sounds crazy for me to think about it right now, like, you know, being a kid to actually like cut yourself, you know what I mean? It's crazy, like, but I think being in a position I was placed in at that time, and it had nothing to do with like my family or nothing, but just trying to find your way in the world, you know what I mean? Trying to find your way in the world is tough when you're growing up. Growing pains, all of that stuff is really tough, you know what I mean? That's why the work that we do now when we go to high schools and schools and teach and talk to the youth and learn from the youth and listen to them and then tell our stories is really important, you know what I mean? To get involved with the youth when they're young, you know what I mean? Because we didn't really have that, you know what I mean? And we're super blessed and lucky to be able to find this outlet, this hip hop expression, you know what I mean? That brought us out of that, you know what I mean? Like, because now I'm a very positive person, you know what I mean? Like, and for me to think about where I came from, it's like a 180, you know what I mean? So. Yeah, I started writing poetry when I was real young. I was too embarrassed to go to a counselor, you know what I mean? So I just wrote poetry. And that's where it all started. And I started, then I was writing rhymes, you know, I was like a closet rapper. I wouldn't like rap in front of people or nothing like that. And then I started rapping on the playground and stuff, you know, we started battling kids on the playground. You know, and that's cool, that's hip hop right there, you know, battling on the playground. And then I met my best friend Chris, and he was already doing it to a very high level, you know, as a young man. Like I considered him like one of the dopest MCs, and I still do, you know what I mean? I really appreciate his style. And we just, you know, he always pushed me to perform. When we were starting off, he was driving, I was too young to drive, and he would like drive us everywhere in this car that he had, this little red neon. Man, he put so many miles on that car, like for all these shows that we went to when we were like 16 and 18. Man, it's incredible, you know. So I definitely gotta thank my best friend for, you know, taking me a lot of places, you know what I mean? But yeah, hip hop is our escape, you know, it's our platform to grow, and it, you know, and luckily we're here connected with you through it, so, you know, we're very, very grateful.
Yeah, and can we give another round of applause for that? Like, honestly, again, like, I know you guys can definitely speak on it, but I know when it comes to making this music and talking about it, it's not an easy thing if you're doing it in a certain extent. I kind of like, when I personally write, I like to think, you know, if it hurts to do it, I'm probably doing it right. And it makes me think back, I took probably one of my favorite professors here, Guy Ramsey. I took his jazz style and history class, and he introduced me to the amazing Bud Powell, and how he was, in a sense, a part of this this group of people, you know, minorities in the music and doing jazz, who were debatably wrongfully institutionalized. And as indigenous peoples, we have that history too. Many people have that history of being wrongfully institutionalized, when all we're really doing is putting this pain out there for others to relate to and to feel with, and for ourselves to just get it out there and deal with it. Some people like to think of art as a form of escape, but I like to think of it as a form of approach too. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that, and you know, hopefully we'll really dig deep. This is exactly what I wanted. So this next guy I'm gonna introduce, I was actually introduced to through the internet by my big sister over here. She, people who know of like my radio show that I used to do, or that, you know, I'm just a rapper myself, they would send me music all the time, like, oh, you need to listen to this, you need to listen to that. And not to be like mean or anything, but 90% of the time I would kind of go to it with like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. And sometimes, a lot of times I wouldn't like it, you know, like, mostly because it was forced on me, it wasn't organic. I like to approach things organically. I don't like someone to tell me I should like something. I almost immediately dislike it because of that. I don't know, maybe I'm what you call a hipster in that sense. Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway. But I saw this music video called Prayers in a Song, and from like, you heard it performed, you know, if you were at the spoken word, and that hit me, you know. I'm not fluent either, but I think the language is important. I think it's important we at least try to learn it. And so I started, you know, searching through more of this guy's music, and I just got hooked, you know. Songs like April Fools and the Taurus project and everything, and I was like, man, I want to meet this guy. Like, this dude seems like a kind of, you know, like what Wake was talking about, a conscious head, and like someone who has a head on their shoulders and thinks, you know, and who's talented with it. And this weekend, again, just like Wake, was my first time meeting him, and it's just been, you know, it's been an experience, and it's been like really, I feel, you know, happy to have met this person. I'm glad I continue to get the opportunity to, you know, be on the same platform as this guy. So please give a round of applause for Tall Paul. And Styles, if you could just explain to us your, you know, your affinity with Muzak. Sorry, we saw a documentary last night where a person continuously said Muzak for some reason. It was kind of funny. Can you just first, please, again, I don't want to speak for you guys at all, so can you introduce to the people who you are, where you come from, how you identify yourself, and all of that?
Alright, so I guess on a human level, it sounds like everybody's kind of telling their life stories a little bit, so I'll just do that kind of in a nutshell. I grew up in South Minneapolis, just grew up in a native family. It was, for the most part, raised by my grandma. She like took care of the whole tribe in one household, so she was like real mean. She was mean, and I understand that looking back now, but yeah, I used to hate her. Yeah, she would like pull hair, stretch ears, and you know, it was funny. There'd be times where I'd get a haircut. You know, she used to being able to pull your hair, and then like fresh off of a haircut, she'd try pulling it, and she'd get like real frustrated trying to pick at the buzz cut, so she just yanked my ear like 10 times harder. So, yeah, so I grew up kind of like that. I mean, I lived with my mom, and she went through like various abusive relationships with my oldest brother's dad, and then with my dad, and then even with my younger brother and sister's dad. So, and I don't remember my dad at all, like as far as my early childhood. I don't remember my older brother's dad, but I remember being real young and living with my mom and all my siblings. I think my sister was just being born around that time, as far as back as I can remember, when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I just remember being raised in an environment of like domestic abuse, you know what I mean? And like seeing hearing my older brothers get beat with a board, things like that. So that's somewhat of my background as far as like being real young. And then I lived with my grandma for years at a time, and then my mom got us back, and we moved to this small town called Redwood Falls when I was about 10 years old. And that was back where my oldest brother's dad lived, so I met their dad, and they got to be around him. And that was probably like 2 of the best years of my life. I met so many good friends there, played football all the time, and just really developed my love for sports. And it was like, you know what I mean, it was almost unreal how good that experience was there. And then like right around the end of the time there in Redwood Falls, I kind of became more aware of my mom's problems with substance abuse. And I remember like specifically one time that kind of stuck out was my mom spent like over 24 hours in the bathroom. And like I didn't know why. My brothers kicked the door in, and they found her in there like with crack, you know, and that's kind of when I became first aware of that. And then shortly after that, we got put in foster care. I bounced back and forth from foster care to family to group homes from like age 12 to 16 and a half. And in between that time is when I started picking up hip hop. I mean, I listened to music from a very young age. I always heard Snoop Dogg, the whole East Coast, West Coast thing. So, and it wasn't like, I didn't grow up around the hip hop culture as far as like in a really close setting, you know what I mean? There was no graph artists or breakers or MCs, DJs in my immediate circle. I was seeing it on the TV or heard it on the radio. And I got inspired by my cousin rapping. He was the first person I seen rap in real life, you know? And I seen him tape recording his raps. And then I was also watching 106th and Park back when the Freestyle Friday thing was real hot and popping. Jin, he got signed to Rough Riders, and I was just like, damn, like, you know, if this Asian cat can do it, I can do it, you know? Nothing against Asians, but you know, it's like we're both, you know, it's not like hip hop. When I was a kid, you know, I thought of it more of as like a black thing, you know, and there was a few white MCs that came out, you know, but I never really heard of anything other than that too much. And so I was like, man, I was real inspired by Jin because he came on in Freestyle Fridays and just murdered his opponents for like 7 weeks straight. Then he got signed to Rough Riders. I was like, damn, you know, and that's like right around when I started writing lyrics. And I also picked up like drinking and smoking in between that time. And I found out real fast that I was like alcoholic, you know, as far as the disease goes. Like, you know, it's like something that people ain't really conscious of. Not a lot of people anyway. It's just like it gets a hold on you. It's like there's that kind of person who can have one beer and then be done, you know. But I was one of those people. I got to have one beer and I got to keep going, get in trouble. So I mean, in between those years of like all the foster care and all that, you know, I was getting into trouble, but I was also developing this love for hip hop, and yeah, and that's kind of where that all started. And then yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of zoom through the rest of it, you know, just getting into trouble, skipping school and stuff. My senior year of high school, I enrolled in a double credit program, stayed after school every day, went to summer school in order to catch my credits up in order to graduate on time. Went to college. I applied at first and I got denied because of my low GPA, but one of my advisors helped me appeal the decision based on extenuating circumstances, which I kind of explained to y'all, and they let me in, and I was first person in my family to ever get into a big university, and I went to the University of Minnesota. And it was around that time my son was born a couple years into college. Met my son's mom a year into college. He was born about a year or 2 years later. And right after, shortly after he was born, that I gave up drinking and all that. And now I've been sober since June 17, 2009. And yeah. And it was like it was late 2008, late 2009 when I started actually doing more than just writing and drunk freestyling and things like that, you know. That's when I was like, when I got sober, I was like, you know, I need a release. I need somewhere to focus my energy now that I'm not focusing all my time on all this partying and stuff. So it was early 2009 when I first performed and first recorded and all that. And yeah, so, I mean, now I'm here.
Wow. That's so heavy and it's so real. When probably the second to last time I actually visited home, well actually before that, I was out here in college and doing my thing and again listening to these guys all the time, and I got a phone call after finals had ended, and it was my father. It was one of the last kind of times that we had really talked on a positive, or not a positive basis, but like a we're not fighting basis. And because I've had issues with, you know, that parental kind of thing too. And he said, you know, we didn't want to tell you this because finals were going on, but you know, the guy that your mom was with had locked her in the house and beat her for, you know, multiple hours. And you know, when I went back home, the second to last time I went back home, I haven't been back home for over 2 years now. I was at the gas station with my little brother and my uncle, who was kind of not on the right path. We were both in separate cars. He had, you know, been packing in his car. He wasn't, you know, kind of not for the right reasons. And it was something I wasn't comfortable with, but I couldn't really say anything. And we're about to leave the Crow Creek Reservation, where my mom's from. And I visited her, you know, and it was tough because she still had like her nose kind of stitched up and all that stuff, and it was just kind of tough to see her, you know. And the guy she was telling me was still kind of bothering her, like even though he had this thing, you know, restraining order, he was still going to her house and creeping on her and stuff, and it wasn't good. And we walk into the gas station there, and this big truck double parks behind us, and this dude walks in and it's him. And he sees me, my younger brother, who's actually taller than me at this point, my father, who's about the same size as us, and my uncle, who, although he's shorter than us, he has all these tattoos on him. He used to, you know, do a lot of crazy things, still doing crazy things. And he looks at the cash register, who's, you know, it's the res, so everyone knows everyone. And he like kind of looks scared, and like he looks at her and she's like, I don't know what to tell you. And I got so angry, and like I was like, if I do something, I can't go back to Penn, and that ruins everything. But at the same time, it's tough because the cousins who raised me told me, you know, if someone so much as talks about your female relative wrong, you know, you do something to them. And I felt like I was losing my manhood, you know, and I didn't do anything, and I just got in the car and I told my uncle, I was like, let's just go, I need to leave, I need to leave. And when I came back here, it was through music, you know. These guys, one thing I really love about your guys' music is you respect women in it and you don't exploit them or, you know, show them in a wrong way. And we were talking about Wake Self's music video, So Good, where, you know, it's just, you know, the homegirls, you know, hanging out and having fun, and it wasn't in a disrespectful way, and it made me think, you know, we can change this way. We can use this art as something to stop that thing from happening. We don't need to beat up other dudes and continue the violence. We can change it, you know, through the art and change that, you know, that conversation. So, man, thank you for sharing all that. Like, I really appreciate it. And to make things a little, you know, schedulized, what got you into music, into rapping? You kind of talked about, you know, you were kind of getting into freestyling, you were seeing all of like the stuff, you know, what really introduced you to it?
I say it's just real young age, listening, you know, basically whatever my cousins and brothers were playing, the Fugees, Loonies, you know, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Biggie, all of that, Twista, DMX. It was that's what kind of got my attention. That's what grasped me. And then it was like seeing my cousin rap into the tape recorder and seeing Jen in music videos, things like that. And then also my brother had a friend who rapped, and you know, I came up and I seen hip hop and rap. I seen this as something distant from me because nobody around my inner circle was doing it. But then when I found out about, you know, local hip hop and things like that, I was like, oh, okay, you know, this is a little bit more real than I thought, you know. And yeah, and that's when I started writing. I don't even remember what I first started writing about. I'd write, you know, just a cappella, or I'd write to a rap song that was on the radio. What was it, Sitting Fat Down South. I remember, can't even think of the song name now, drawing a blank, but Lil Troy, and I remember like word for word writing his song lyrics down and just pressing repeat, just repeating this song like 100 times, and you know, it's just kind of how I got into writing, and yeah, that's kind of what drew me in.
Can we get another round of applause for that? So this next person we're bringing up, I've known him for probably the longest out of the group. We actually kind of came from the same scene for a second. Back in South Dakota, my freshman year in high school, I went to St. Francis Indian School, which used to be owned by this church and then passed on to the tribe, or however they did it. And you know, I was there as a freshman, and that was the same year that Zane had died. So, you know, I think I made like 8 little mixtapes, and I was just passing out the CDs. If you got perfect attendance, no write-ups, and good grades, they gave you a Walmart gift card. So every time I got the Walmart gift card, I was getting the CDs and I was passing them out. And a lot of us were doing that. Like, there were so many cats who were just like, you know, just remixing songs and making, we were joking around. I was remembering I had done a diss song myself to Genuine's My Pony. My War Pony. Oh man. And you know, we kind of, you know, talk about the negativities of, you know, how the scene was back then, and how like people were just kind of almost like, you know, crabs in a bucket. You know, every rapper just wanted to be the better one, so everyone was kind of pulling each other down when instead we should have been putting on shows together. But you know, I found out later in my senior year when I transferred to Crow Creek and I went back to St. Francis to graduate, and I kind of started hearing about this group named Nake Nula Wa'um, and it's a Lakota phrase that means I'm always ready for anything at any time. And people were talking about this dude named Frank, and apparently he went to Todd County, and SF and Todd County just didn't mix for some reason. Like, there's rivalry and da-da-da, we don't talk to them. And like, but both schools had like music scenes. We had multiple people who were just passing out CDs and, you know, trying to outshine each other and like put up SoundClick and MySpace and stuff. And you know, it was fun. Like I thought it was fun, you know, for the time being. And but I heard about Frank, and I remember I was kind of like upset at first, because they're like, people were, you know, telling stories like, oh, he just gave up the Gates Millennium Scholarship to, you know, just drop out of school and whatever. And I was like, damn, because I just got denied the Gates. And so I was like salty. I was like, that ain't cool. But then I started listening to the music and what he was saying, and I started like actually hearing his words and what he was saying, like the reasoning behind what he was doing and what he was planning to go actually back into school, but for something else, like his dream, like what he envisioned. And I clung to that. I was like, that's what's up. And I started listening to the lyrics, and I was like, nobody else is saying this, at least in our scene, like whatever you want to call our scene is. So it was around this time that I wanted to do a podcast, and it was why I was asking every college if they had a radio station. And the first person I kind of went up to was, you know, Nake just released Scars and Bars, and it was Lakota Nation Invitationals. And I don't know if Frank remembers this, but I went up to him, and I went up to Dre first, actually. And Dre's kind of like, I'm just a rapper, man. I don't talk to people. Da, da, da. This guy's the one that talks to people, and it was Frank. And I met him, and he was just a nice guy. Like, I was like, that's what's up. And you know, we're doing the show tonight. You should come, watch us, hang out. And he gave me his card. Back then, we were, you know, trying to get up there, you know. You know, now you would call it like low quality printouts, but back then that was like dope. Like no one was doing that from our scene and from our places, you know. And I respected it a lot. And I went to that show, and I was like, you know, I see this going somewhere. Like when we show love to one another and when we just put on and do these shows, you know, the kids were loving it. I was so used to going to shows where people were like, oh, this is corny and this ain't working or whatever. But this one, people were like dancing, like screaming loud. That was the first time I heard, you know, a performance that, you know, someone from the scene was doing where like there were girls screaming in the crowd. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, this can happen. And when I started doing the radio show out here, I made sure to contact Frank again and make him my first interview. So like the pilot episode of the radio show was with Frank, and that's when he just did, I believe, like Hear My Cry, and things were starting to blow up, and it's just been an honor for me to watch that transformation and progression go. Like, you know, people were at one point, you know, making fun of Nake Nula, and then next thing you know, kids are putting Nake Nula Wa'un on their birthday cakes and saying it as basketball chants. And then all of a sudden, you know, Frank's on MTV, you know, doing a big represent for us in a good way. And I was just so happy to even get to talk to him. And I'm so honored to call him, you know, like these guys, you know, my older brother. So without further ado, Frank Waln. So again, South, can you just introduce to us who you are, you know, where you come from, how you identify?
Well, my name is Frank Waln. I am a 25-year-old Sichongu Lakota from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, like Talon said, born and raised. Recent college graduate. I identify myself as, first and foremost, Sichongu Lakota, because that defines my worldview through my culture, through my elders, through my ceremony. Secondly, an artist, and thirdly, probably a son and family member. Those are the things that are most important to me. And I'll just be brief. So I was born and raised on the Rosebud Res. I was a really shy kid. Went through similar stuff as all these guys. Like, I could relate to almost everything they were saying. You know, as a product of a violent relationship as well. See my dad beat up on my mom emotionally, physically, spiritually until they split up when I was 4. Then I was raised by my mom's side of the family, by my mother and aunties and grandma. Very fortunate to be raised in a matriarchal household. Now that I'm older, I believe that. And but music was my outlet. It was my way to talk about what I was feeling inside. graduated from my high school, valedictorian. I was the first person at my high school to get the Gates Millennium Scholarship. I in fact, did not throw it away. I took a deferment. I left my res. I studied pre-med for 2 years because when I got this scholarship, you know, where Talon and I come from, not a lot of us graduate high school, let alone get to go to college. So I had this opportunity. For those of you who don't know, the Gates Millennium Scholarship is a full ride wherever you choose to go. And everyone around me was saying, be a lawyer, be a doctor, all this prestigious stuff. And no one sat me down and said, Frank, what do you want to do? Like, what are you interested in? It was music, and I didn't believe in it. I didn't even tell anyone that I made music. I did it because it made me feel good, and I loved it. And I taught myself how to make beats. I taught myself how to play piano. Started off writing poetry like these guys. And I went away to college, Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. Studied pre-med for 2 years. And just realized that after a certain point, after those 2 years, I got really depressed for a lot of reasons. There was things going on in my family. My best friend was dying of cancer. I wasn't happy doing what I was studying. And I took a year off. I took a year deferment on my Gates, so they like basically paused it for a year while I figure out my life. I went back home to the res, and that's when I started making music with Nake Ulualu, like Talon said. And I reconnected to our culture and our ceremonies, and I decided to do what I wanted to do and what was gonna make me happy, and just make music despite what anyone said, because I loved it. And once I started doing what I loved, it was like things fell into place. I won my first Native American Music Award that year. And it would trip me out because I was just a kid sitting in my cousin's basement making beats on my laptop, you know, and we started winning these awards and people started paying attention to what we were doing. And it was crazy to me. And then I ended up in Chicago, where I just graduated from Columbia College. I have a BA in Audio Arts and Acoustics. I transferred there. And yeah, and now I graduated, like this is my career, you know, and I never in a million years thought I would be able to do this. But hip-hop connected with me, and like these guys, you know, my cousins were listening to gangster rap, Dead Prez, you know, a lot of stuff, we were around it. So I was around those influences. And I've been thinking a lot lately about why our generation of indigenous youth connects and relates. And you know, for me it was like they were telling a story, and it was about the drums and the voice and the story. And a lot of our traditional music, it's about the drum and the voice and the story. And it was a catharsis. It was a way to, like, I was listening to these artists, and it was like they were telling my story, and it was like an emotional outlet. And you know, I think all these guys touched on it. We're all survivors of genocide, you know? And so we have this historical trauma, and what I like to call this colonial rage inside of us. We're born with it, whether we're aware of it or not. And those who created hip-hop, they were coming up out of slavery, and we were coming up out of genocide, and we connected and we related, you know? And that rage was inside of us, and as you've seen, sometimes it manifests itself in negative ways with the violence and the substance abuse. But hip-hop gives us an outlet for that rage. Whether you're talking about breaking, you know, it's like they're getting it out of them. Graph writing, rapping, you're getting that out of you in a positive way, in a healthy way. And you're building community at the same time. So, you know, to me, those are indigenous values, you know, building community, love, expressing yourself. So I think that's why I connected and related, and maybe why we do too. It's something that's inherent to us, even down to our DNA as indigenous folks, you know. We have a lot of solidarity with our black brothers and sisters that goes way back, and this music is just another example of that. So that's why I connected and related. It was a way for me to get that out of me, and still to this day, you know, I wrote songs to heal, and everywhere I go, people say they get healing from my music. And if you think back, you know, I wanted to be a doctor. I always knew I wanted to help people, and now I get to do that with what I love through this music. And it reminds me of a story. When I went back home to my res and I quit studying pre-med, I was talking to an elder that I know, and he was always asking me about what I was doing. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I left Creighton. I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be a rapper." And he looked at me and he shook his head. He's like, And he said something that still sticks with me to this day. He said, "Sometimes music is the best medicine." And I think, you know, we're all examples of that today, just through our life stories and the music that we make now, bring healing first for ourselves and then to our communities, you know. And so I think we're good examples of that. So that's just kind of my little story in a nutshell without going in depth.
Can we give another round of applause? So this is the site, isn't it? I want to talk about something you just touched on, and I think it's very important. You know, one thing that a lot of you guys have done, all of you guys have done, is something for the youth. I think back to, you know, I reference this all the time, Tall Paul's participation in the Cold Flows for Warm Clothes event, where, you know, they were raising money to get, you know, warm clothes for kids who needed that assistance. And, you know, Wag, Def, and Frank, and, you know, everybody always doing these, you know, youth workshops and things like that, and showing that, you know, that education can be given in all forms, you know, and like, you know, you can use things like the gates for something other than what people expect you to. The funny thing was, the reason why I didn't get the gates, because I put that my career path was psychology. And they're saying, you know, we don't need that. And I was like, what? Like, you know, I was in Rosebud at the time, and I was like, we definitely need that. And like, I just find it so beautiful that you guys have all been able to utilize music in that same sense, in the sense of healing. And you know, your own album was called The Healing Process. And like, so could you just speak on, you know, what made the idea really stick in your mind? And I guess we'll start with Frank. What made the idea really stick in your mind, be it, you know, ideology that you learned growing up, or what kind of hip hop speaks to? What put the, you know, thought in your mind that, you know, the youth is something worth investing in, and that we do need to do these workshops and things like that?
Well, for me personally, the youth on my reservation were the first people that supported me. They were my first fans. You know, I had my peers and even some older people in my family saying, your music's never going to go anywhere, you're never going to get off our res, what are you doing, why are you doing this? And I was just doing it because I loved it, and then pretty soon kids started relating and like listening to our music and coming to our shows, and they gave me my power, you know, they gave me my strength, even so much so that when I got my Lakota name from my elders in ceremony, Oyate Tchecha Omani, it means walks with young people, because they saw that, and that's very important to me. And for me, and I said it in my spoken word piece, I really believe the answers live in our youth, you know, because they're still untouched by these systems that condition us, whether we're talking about sexism, racism, you know, all these different isms that we're conditioned in the systems of youth. You talk to kids, man, and they still got that light and that spirit in them. And I think, you know, like I said, they gave me my strength and my power. And you know, for me, I think in my community anyway, that's where it needs to start. Because we've been through all that stuff. We've kind of been scarred by the system, scarred by society. And those kids are you know, still untouched by those systems to a certain extent. We can still get to them and guide them in the right direction, you know. Through our music, we can redefine what love means in our communities. We can redefine how we look at and treat our women, you know, as we all heard stories of abuse in our own communities. We can redefine what it means to be Lakota. And we can take those messages and put it into this music, and these kids are relating to this art form and this music, and we can show them a better way.
I think it's important to provide this we were doing after-school programs at an APS, which is Albuquerque Public Schools, and also on the reservation. I think it's really important because of the lack of music and art programs that are available in public school systems for youth, and especially on the reservation. Like, we've done some workshops, and most of the schools take us to this room that's never been used before. And so that alone, you know, says that we need to be doing this and at least utilizing the space and budget available. Otherwise, we're here for the youth because it's really all about them. We want to pass these our teachings that were passed on to us in the right way, in a sort of, in a way like we're kind of passing the torch on to future MCs and just future beat makers. Most of the youth we work with, they've never heard their voice on a microphone ever before, so they get really surprised. So when they first hear their first bars being recorded on record, and I think it's a powerful thing, especially because a lot of Native youth are really introverted, it seems at times. We're not really that social at the beginning stages until you get to know us. So we're here to try to help, provide a space and platform for them to be themselves and use hip-hop in a good way. And we're just here to try to scaffold them to become better MCs. We want them to rock the mic right. So that's what we're here for.
The youth is, like Frank and Dev said, is definitely the most important aspect of, I feel like, a lot of the work that we're doing. You see, to me, I always think about it like we have all these older beliefs that need to be dissolved in, in society, in the government and all that stuff. Classism and racism, and gender equality and things like that that are so old, you know what I mean? We think about like, why is this stuff still plaguing us today, you know what I mean? And I think as some of these older maybe mindsets become outdated and they fade, the only way to create a new world is through the youth, because they're next up, you know what I mean? They're going to be the ones next up, like just like we are right now, ones trying to put in the footwork and the elbow grease to, you know what I mean, to hopefully leave some tools and a little bit of knowledge that we were able to gather for them, because they're going to be the ones that, you know what I mean? We are always like, who's the next Mahatma? Who's the next Peltier? Who's the next Malcolm? Who's the next Martin? You know what I mean? And the kids that are coming up, we have to give them what they need to dream, you know what I mean? We need to give them open space and all these walls that we put up of these different like isms, and like I was saying, that's what keeps them inside these boxes to where they can't, get out and do what they're supposed to do, because they're supposed to be the leaders, you know what I mean? The kids are the leaders, like the so-called leaders, they're not leading us anywhere, you know what I mean? And the only way for us to fully, I would think, utilize the skills that we're given is to work with the kids, you know what I mean? And it's a blessing because we learn ourselves how to become patient again, we learn how to be humble again, yeah, and how to listen, and we all lose sight of that, you know what I mean? And I think that's what happens to human nature a lot. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
I just, when I was in college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about my childhood and how I felt as a kid going through the things I did go through. So I was like, why don't I make a career out of youth work and do something, because I remember there being a few particular different men who served kind of as father figures while I was going through the group homes and things like that, and I was like, I want to be that for somebody else, you know what I mean? When I become an adult, I want to be that for somebody else who was feeling how I felt as a kid, and that was my motivation for getting into youth work. And and now on top of that, I got a 7-year-old son, so it's even more motivating, because now I'm like I'm challenging myself in ways that I wouldn't have challenged myself probably if I didn't have a son, because I want my son to be stronger than I was, and stronger than I am. And his personality's pliable. He's only 7 years old, you know what I mean? So it's like, now's the time for me to be getting as strong as I can be, so it can rub off on him. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the youth.
Thank you.
That's all like there's so many things we can go off of from all of that. Like, you can hear, and one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is something that Wake just said too, which was breaking down like the walls that we put up ourselves. And what I mean by that is or at least I see it a lot of the times in psychology, where, you know, they're trying to do studies and make correlations between one thing and the next, but in doing so they categorize. So you get, you know, when they give people questionnaires to do a study, you know, they ask them race, ethnicity, and it says, you know, white, black, Asian, Native American, Alaskan Hawaiian, other, and mixed. Hispanic. And not knowing that those little categories cover so much different things. Like, you know, to say the term Native American is just like to say the term Asian. Like, what do you mean by that? You know, where'd you grow up? What home are you from? What are you talking about? And the thing that really got me was when they said mixed. I was like, well, what mixture are you talking about? You know, like, and one of the kind of unfortunate things, but also like I see both positives and negatives in this is hip hop itself is, to me, a unifying art form where, you know, you can get cats like Immortal Technique, the Narcissist, our artists up here right now, coming from completely different contexts, respect their individual like persons and where they come from, and the groups that they come from or the circles that they come from. But in the end, when you pick apart, you know, certain people's messages, you see that they're almost saying the same message. You know, talking of rallying against the same, you know, the same negatives that be out there. So we were talking about this earlier and a few other times, and how, you know, when we get on the microphone and we do our music, there's often this portrayal of Native American hip-hop as opposed to hip-hop done by Native Americans. And categorizing it to a point where, you know, it's great that we're getting our voices out there, but are we limiting ourselves in that sense? Or are people limiting us by putting us in that pile and kind of almost telling us to stay there? And I don't like anybody telling me to stay there. It's kind of like what Miles Davis said, you know, he was a guy who transcended beyond jazz, and every jazz musician hated him for it. They're like, why are you sampling in your music? We're getting mad at the people sampling our music. And Miles was like, that's what the white man wants us to do. Like, he said it straight up. He said, they said you can learn our music and play it with a lot of feeling, stay there. But he didn't. And so I just kind of want to see what you guys think about that and how you kind of combat that, whether it be through your collaborations with so many other people, the shows that you do with other people, etc.
I guess the way that we would combat those stereotypes as us being, you know, pigeonholed into being Native American artists versus just being an artist first, is by actually going out and like competing in competitions that are way out of the Native American circle. Like, so what we do is in our crew, we have a crew called Sheet Rocks, and that's an all-element, all Native American-based hip-hop collective of artists, practitioners, not just rappers, like b-boys, b-girls, DJs, and also writers too, style writers or graffiti artists. And so well, we've gathered together just to kind of represent the nations as a whole, because it's a collective of all kinds of tribes, from Canada all the way down to Mexico and everywhere in between. And we just go out and participate and partake in competitions that are just Native American based, you know what I mean? Anybody in hip-hop's gonna get down at those events, and being on that same platform and equal grounds allows us to kind of be us and still kind of get recognition and still participate, and sometimes even win the battles, so which is really cool, because like that kind of legitimizes, you know, like at first, you know, we being from the res first, even before all that, we were kind of looked at as the outsiders from everybody inside Albuquerque, just because, you know, maybe we're Native Americans and stuff, or, you know, whatever. And it took a lot of winning battles, like winning competitions, to gain that, you know, that respect in Albuquerque. So where now they're like, oh, I'm glad you're from Albuquerque, versus like before you proved your point, proved yourself on stage in front of a battle, they'd be like, who is this cat from Shiprock, New Mexico? You know what I mean? He's nobody. Why are we gonna even let him get on the mic? Like, they'll lower your mic down a little bit while and turn the other dudes up. So like, you gotta win a lot of battles to really gain that respect on the street level, I guess. But yeah, so just being in all elements and trying to just represent in a good way, that's kind of how we were kind of breaking those stereotypes, so anybody can just notice us and be like, hey, they're hip-hop artists, they're not just Native American hip-hop artists. They can get down in all these other elements too, just as good as we can from wherever. So that's a good way we break it down.
So just piggyback off what Def said, I do a similar thing, you know, just diversifying where you showcase your art and the people you collaborate and interact with. But I just want to touch briefly on that concept of categorizing. That's to me, a very Western colonial view. You know, even when you look at Western society, this is the church, this is the hospital, like everything is so compartmentalized and sectionalized, but I approach everything from my culture, which is Lakota, where we don't categorize everything, you know. Where we have ceremony, that's our church and our hospital. Who says one thing is one, you know. Same thing with our music. I try to approach my music, the events I do, work I do, through a very decolonial view in that way, trying not to compartmentalize and sectionalize everything and limit myself, because then that puts up those walls that we were talking about, you know. So just even decolonizing the way we look at our music and the way we interact with other people who are doing that music. And I don't like saying what I do is native hip-hop, because, you know, hip-hop is a culture and we're participating in it. And we're indigenous, but it's black culture, and we can't erase that history, you know, that where it comes from. And it comes from these black people who are drawing from, for me, tribal African roots. That's indigenous to me, you know. So native hip-hop's kind of saying the same thing twice, you know. So that's how I look at it. And like Dev said, just, you know, being mindful of not playing into that, because a lot of the powers that be and opportunities are looking at our culture, that hip-hop culture, through a colonial Western lens. So just be mindful of that and not buy into that system. Even if that means I might not get some successes or opportunities others who buy into that get, and so be it, you know. Just decolonizing the way we look at our art.
Yeah, just to add to that, I personally, I also build with a lot of cats in the Universal Zulu Nation. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's Africa Bambaataa, who's considered the godfather of hip-hop. Mark Love on the West Coast, DJ Mark Love, built with him recently. And from the elders of hip-hop, you know, we all know, if you know your hip-hop history, yeah, it came from, you know, the inner city. But it's deeper than that, you know what I mean? You talk to KRS-One, and he's like, man, this has been happening forever, like Frank was saying earlier, you know, storytelling. Chris has another point that he was saying before, that hip-hop, you know, hieroglyphs and things like that, you know, could be considered what people call graffiti, you know what I mean, or writing. You know what I mean? You take it back to there, and dancing, you know, we've been dancing in circles, just like hip-hop, you know what I mean? And KRS once, he said, a good acronym for hip-hop is Her Infinite Power Healing Oppressed People. People, you know what I mean? People, all of us. And hip-hop is, it doesn't have a skin tone anymore, you know what I mean? It's for everybody. Like, we are thankful for Africa Bambaataa and Kool Herc and the originators, you know what I mean? Grandmaster Caz, who brought this out, you know what I mean? And the b-boys like Latino and Puerto Rican cats, you know what I mean? Crazy Legs, Rocksteady, you know what I mean? Take it back to the roots. But what I always loved about hip hop was a lot of hip hop elders would tell you, like, if you're good, if you're nice, then you know what I mean. It doesn't matter like what, if you're a female, if you're whatever color, you know what I mean. If you're purple, if you're pink, you know what I mean. If you're good at what you do, when you get on the mic, when you get on the beats, when you get on the art, you know what I mean, then that's respected in hip hop. You know what I mean? Hip hop, we respect skills, and it's skills first. You know what I mean? Skills first. That's how I feel about it.
I'm telling you, if you don't know any of those people, research them. Please research them. Oh, you will not be sorry.
They kind of all said it already for me. I mean, not much left for me to add to that. Yeah, it's just I feel like when you say something like native hip hop, if you put that on a flyer, it almost be like saying, you know, come to this white hip hop show. Like, so what's it gonna be like at this white hip hop show? I'm gonna stay away from that, you know. So it's like, I mean, you know, if you're not native and you see native hip hop, and then you know, all these natives on the flyer, it's like, I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't want to be an outsider, I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I'm not going to go to that show. Even though I'm talking about things that are universal in some ways, you know, that apply cross-culturally, and doesn't matter what race you're in, you know, so, yeah.
I'm quoting that in something, I swear. Oh, man. So, I want to save room for questions, and I also want to save room for our artists to eat before we do the show. So I'm just going to ask one more on my end, and it's something that I think definitely sticks out in your guys' art and your craft and your music. And I'm just going to say a lot of quick things like, Wake, you have At the Speed of Bike, which is, you know, talking about kind of being more eco-friendly, and yeah, definitely. And, you know, Frank, you have, you know, we worked on the Oil for Blood music video together, and, you know, you've been doing the Reject and Protect protest, the climate change rallies in New York, and Def, you've been doing not only that, but also like the police brutality protests and things like that. Tall Paul, the same thing. So with all of that, you know, what kind of taught you guys, because I don't like to think that anybody ever knew all of it at once, you know, we all have to kind of learn. There was a time where I was doing a native hip hop show and I had to realize, like, you know, it's bigger than that. So what kind of, you know, inspired you to actually say something with your music and kind of push for something beyond not only self-expression, but, you know, movements that can help the earth and help our future, and you know, really whatever messages you guys spread, because you all spread your own messages, and in some cases they overlap, and in some cases maybe they don't, but I think that's what's beautiful about it. So if you could just explain that.
So it was just a series of events that led me to talk about, to make the music I make, and one of the big ones was when I moved to Chicago to go to school. The first week I was there, I got in an elevator in my dorm room, and this girl got on the elevator with me, this white girl, and she said, "You have really pretty hair, what are you?" And I said, "Thank you, I'm Lakota, I'm Native American." And she looked at me confused, and she said, "You guys are still alive?" And she thought we were extinct, you know, and talk about not even having an identity to defend. And words can't even describe how that made me feel, but it just got me thinking, like, wow, people think we don't even exist, you know? And so I just started talking about my reality and through my music, and kind of trying to counteract that narrative that we see in mainstream media when it comes to indigenous peoples, that we're a static, dead culture of the past. And you know, a lot of people say I'm an activist, I'm a rebel, whatever. With the music, it's protest music. But if you listen to the things I'm saying, all I'm saying is I want me and my family and my community to be happy, healthy, and respected. And if that makes me a rebel, then what are we saying about society, you know? If just me wanting that for myself and my family makes me a rebel to the rest of society. Because the truth is, we're living in a society, in a country that was built on the dehumanization of our peoples, black and brown peoples. So when we talk about our realities, I guess that labels as protest music or whatever. But it was just me going through experiences like that, and then also reconnecting to my culture through our ceremonies, and you know, learning that my people, indigenous people, Lakota people, we have a connection to this land and this water as caretakers that's older than the United States. The United States of America is the youngest nation in this continent. Our nations were here before that, and we took care of this land before that, before these corporations, before money, you know? So I'm just honoring that. Like I said, just decolonizing the way I look at my art and approaching it from a Lakota standpoint. And so that's why I make the type of music I make.
Gotta give it up to my man Frank Waln one more time. That was really beautiful. Started taking music, I mean the concepts and topics to rap about a lot more seriously within the past probably 3 or 4 years. Hip hop is also like about, you know, peace, love, and unity and having fun, but also we can speak on more serious issues at hand too as well. Back home, there's a lot of police brutality. As some may know, Albuquerque, the police department's really well known for its homicides lately. They shoot a lot of people back home, homeless people, people of color. So I just wanted to express myself on that. And I'm not against every police officer at all, just the ones that are abusing their authority. So that's along the lines of what I was speaking with my music on that point. On the other hand, I'm just kind of joining with Frank Waln and the movement to start speaking for our land as well. So I have this track, well, New Mexico is known as the land of enchantment, but lately there's a lot of fracking zones that are taking place, and it's really terrorizing the land in so many different ways. Also the wildlife, people too, having problem with breathing and stuff. So I'm just working on this song called The Land of Enfrackment, and I'm going to be shooting a video for that, and it's along the same lines as music as Frank's, taking a stance for our people and our land. And big ups to everybody who's really out there doing it, frontline back home. They're having this walk that a lot of females, and I mean everybody's welcome to walk, and it's a peaceful march to protest against it, basically. And so big ups to everybody who's doing that back home. I'm just here as a musician to try to do that and to speak more seriously on topics like that, because we really do care. And we're out there driving in the middle of nowhere where people won't see where all this electricity and everything's generated from. It's back home, and we don't see none of that, and we're kind of tired of that. So that's why we're standing up against it. We're just done with all that. So that's why we're here.
For me, MCing, the art of MCing, you have to use your light, you know, and your spotlight for something worthy. That's how I feel, you know. I've always felt that way. I made that song called Speed a Bike. It's an eco-friendly song. You know, I recycle, whatever. We grow our own food, you know, we compost. For me, I grew up by a lake. I grew up by this big lake, and then as I was getting older, I go back to the lake years later after I moved into the city and came back, and the lake is now half the size, and it's all filled with garbage. You know what I mean? And that's how humanity, like you know, the large portion of humanity is treating the earth. You know what I mean? And for me, it's real sad. You know, it's sad for a lot of us. I'm a human, and I respect human life, and I would like for the children in the next generation to have something to build on. You know what I mean? To have for there to be a planet to live on. You know what I mean? And I did, when I was going to college, I researched environmental science. You know, so I'm always staying up to date on all the newest stuff. One of my friends, Big Brother's Mike 360 back home, he's talking about a bike that you ride the bike and it also plows your field at the same time. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of people we need. People who create things that will further, you know what I mean, further direction of us to cultivate ourselves in the right way. You know what I mean? Like, the right technologies is what we need. We don't need like, we don't need more technology. We need to fix the technology that we have. You know what I mean? But I feel like being an MC, you gotta speak on things. You know, we're kind of like the storytellers. We're like the newspapers. You know what I mean? But we speak on things that are actually relevant. There's people dying all over the world, like from police brutality, from you know, from corrupt governments, from radiation, you know what I mean, from food, from the chemicals they put in the food, from human trafficking, you know what I mean? All this is going on, and then we got the kids and listening to people talking about popping bottles and being in the club, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't compute to me. Like, I don't see how that is important, you know what I mean? And the record labels, they have, they're endorsed by corporations, you know what I mean? They have agreements with corporations who produce alcohol, you know, the alcohol corporations. The record labels are invested in the prison systems. I don't know if you guys know that, but it makes sense when you think about all the rappers that are the most famous rappers. Like, they kind of dumb us down, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to disrespect or step on anybody else's dreams or nothing, because I don't feel like it's the person's fault. I feel like it's the system's fault that's in place, like the labels and the way they look for this talent, and the way they make you compromise to put out a hit song. You have to fit in these margins, you know what I mean? And for us, for me, you know, and these brothers are along the same lines. We have to say something that's real, you know what I mean? And spotlight these issues that the world needs to know about. So I'm blessed to be able to partake in that, you know.
For me, when I started recording and performing, I was just coming out of a dark spot. So it was like my music was just naturally deep and thoughtful and somewhat, you know, conscious, politically charged. And now it's just, I mean, even though I'm in a much better place, it's just a part of life. I'm just, I guess, I see other struggles and I become empathetic and compassionate. So it's just in me, you know. It's not like a conscious choice, like, okay, I'm gonna do this because people like it. It's because it's what I feel and what I like, you know. And at the same time, though, I don't want, going back to that whole label thing, I don't want to call myself a conscious MC or a conscious hip-hop artist, because then I can't be anything else, you know what I mean? Then it's like people want to put you to this standard, like, oh, you're a conscious MC, you can't rap about sex, you can't rap about having fun, you know what I mean? Your whole album's got to be about the struggle. And it's like, okay, I mean, my whole life ain't a struggle, you know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, I still have fun, you know. It's like, it becomes wrong when like Wake Self was saying, you know, it becomes wrong when it's like used as a marketing tool, and it's like all that is on the radio is, you know, girls shaking their ass and dudes, you know, people partying, you know. When that's all you hear, then it's wrong. But if it's like, I don't think it's wrong for us to have like one song on the album about that, because I mean, that is, you know what I mean? Sometimes me and my girlfriend go out and we dance, and then, you know what I mean, we go back home, and you know what I'm saying? It's like... So that's something that I try to get into, and I guess like... I remember there was this Immortal Technique track, I forget what it was called, but he was saying, he was basically getting back at critics who criticized him or something like that. He was like, what, just because I'm a revolutionary, you don't think I like to fuck too, or something like that, you know what I mean? So it's like that, you know what I mean? So it's like I am conscious, but I'm also, you know, imperfect, you know what I mean? And it's a funny, short, quick story, and it's actually like kind of the concept behind my next album. Me and a friend of mine, co-worker, were at work, and there's this lady who was working in the same building as us, and she was like very attractive, you know. So I mean, sometimes we'd see her and we'd be like, yo man, you see such and such today? He'd be like, yeah. And we actually gave her this nickname, Miss New Booty, because she was new. And, she was new to work there, and he was like, hey, you see Miss New Booty? Like, but I mean, it wasn't like nothing super disrespectful or nothing. We just kind of like, we didn't like we didn't like encroach on her space or like disrespect her or nothing directly, you know what I mean? We'd like be like, yo, did you see her? She was looking fly today, you know, like kind of stuff like that. And he'd be like, man, we're no good. And then I'll be like, you know, at the same time though, we're good guys, you know what I mean? We're working in a school, we're like positive role modeling for these youth, you know what I mean? And it was just on a humorous level, so I was like, you know, he's saying we're no good, I'm saying we're good guys, so I was like, you know what, we're no good guys. So, and then, yeah, and then I actually wrote a song called No Good Guy that I'll perform tonight. Hopefully y'all ain't got a problem with that, you know what I'm saying, because that's kind of touching on the concept. It's like the hook goes, it's like, it's time I introduce the no good guy. Come get acquainted with the not the rough prolific rhyme, critically acclaimed the conscious MC. But I don't chase pussy, man, pussy chase me. I'm known to advocate for civil rights and reading books. Uncivilized when I'm deprived, I play the role of crooks. Now I believe in children being drug free, but I don't chase pussy, man, pussy chase me. And it's just like, you know what I mean? So it's that's my thoughts.
You know, I was really hoping, I kind of knew in the beginning, but I was really hoping all of these answers would be like the best answers ever. And I was right. No, but really, you know, there's a reason why I wanted and was excited and just blessed to have these guys come up. And I hope you've experienced that too. You know, like I said, these guys are my mentors and my people who I look up to. You know, when I feel like I need more, I need something to learn or something is missing in my artwork or the way I'm thinking, I listen to these guys' songs and I try to understand what they're doing, and I go to their interviews and I kind of hear them talk about it, or, you know, we do what we did here today. So I just want to thank these guys for opening up. You know, it's hard to say some of these things. You know, you fear about, you know, people thinking you're airing them out when really you're telling the truth. And, you know, so I appreciate them, appreciate you guys, you know, coming up here and just, you know, saying what you feel, and for not only doing that, but for doing the show tonight and for, you know, showing love in the way that you are. And I thank all of you for, you know, being, you know, listening attentively and like opening your hearts and souls to us and what we have to say. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause for all of Now, I don't want to take up too much time because, you know, I want these guys to eat a little bit or have a little bit of a prep before, you know, we go into sound check. But if anyone has any questions that they have, now would be the time. I see everyone right there.
Yeah. From what I've gotten from you guys, you endeavored to maintain authenticity. And I think, you know, hip-hop starting within Black culture also endeavored to maintain authenticity. But as they became imperialized by mainstream, as you had touched on, they've definitely lost a lot of the truth that they were trying to, that they started giving to the people, to populations. And how, do you guys think you guys are immune, or your particular, and I apologize for categorizing them, your particular genre is immune to being imperialized by mainstream, or no? Yes?
No one's immune from that, you know, like I said, for me personally, just an example of that is, you know, a lot of times I'll get hit up for a show or an interview and they want me to play Indian, or they want it to be about poverty porn, just talk about the poverty, you know, playing into that system and the view of how they view our communities. So we're definitely not immune to that. This is just a little snippet, and just like any other, you know, genre of music, there's the whole span. There's native artists that are buying into that. There's native artists that are buying into that imperialism upon the culture. So we're definitely not immune to that. I think we're just kind of cognizant of that, and for me anyway, I'm cognizant of that and how I approach my opportunities in my art. So I don't think we're immune to it. We just got to be more aware of it.
Definitely also respect true school hip hop to what hip hop was originally meant for and what it is. I believe, I agree with Frank that we aren't immune to it. From my experiences being in New Mexico, a lot of East and West Coast practitioners of hip hop are really surprised at how developed but strong the hip hop scene is in the Southwest. There's actually all kinds of hip hop artists from all walks of life, because New Mexico is a very diverse state, which helps too. And so there's all kinds of ciphers and competitions and events that involve all of hip hop too. So that's really good. That helps keep hip hop strong. So I guess maybe not having to deal with so much of the corporations and stuff, and just having a local community-based hip-hop scene is what keeps it strong too, and that's what we have in Albuquerque in the southwestern area, especially in rural areas, places where there's, well, we got to throw the jams there though too, so I got to give big ups to DJ Cedro, because he's been playing, he's almost, I would kind of consider DJ Cedro to be the godfather of hip-hop on our res, because he was playing records and back then in the 80s too, and actually on our reservation too, and so he was the first DJ to pass me a microphone, and having those community-based hip-hop scenes like that is what keeps your scene strong and immune from all the whackness out there that gets involved with hip-hop these days. So it's good to, think it's a great question. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just on tour in Europe. I was blessed to be on tour in Europe, and out there and overseas, it's crazy how they love real hip hop. You can really live and thrive and off of making real hip hop music. You know what I mean? Out here in America, it's tougher. For it to be real, you almost have to compromise. But out there, there's people. I have friends who out here, they do pretty good. They're pretty well known in the States, but when they go overseas, they tour and they win big awards like Artist of the Year, you know what I mean? And they're always gone overseas, you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting to think about how you don't necessarily have to compromise to reach a certain level, you know what I mean? You can look past the borders, that you know what I mean, so-called borders, and push your music to the whole world, because the world, they're more open. There's people out there who really respect the true essence of the culture,
Yeah, I just keep it simple. I don't think anybody's immune. I agree with what everybody was saying, and I don't think anybody's immune from turning into or being influenced by that mainstream music.
And I think it speaks to something too in terms of being scared of what people may think. It's, to me, at least with the way I do, it's very self-exposing. I've had people, talk to me who've listened to a few of my songs, you really said a lot of things that are kind of personal. Do you fear that, when you go into psychology and you do clinical psych, will that affect that? And to which my reply was, no, because it's real. I can't lie to my employer, and that too. So I think we have time for one more question. I'm sorry, I should have left more time for questions, but let's do two more. So, yes.
Hi, so first I want to say thank you. You guys are absolutely brilliant. And the second thing is, a lot of things that you guys were talking about really pay homage to everything that, Black and Latino folks in the Bronx were really uplifting and uprooting. It definitely, the line that I hear reminds me of that, in the ghetto from Rakim, when he says it's it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. You know, and I think that that's something you guys all have been saying, and definitely at the end when Paul was just talking about like his experience of like not wanting to be boxed in, you know, it reminds me of like this feminist Joan Morgan. She talks about like, I want a hip hop that fucks with the grays, you know, like we should have agency to like be whoever we want to be, right, and do all those things. And so, you know, in where I am currently in my life and my career, I have the blessing and the honor to be personally responsible for, you know, about 300 high school students around New York City. And, you know, when I'm working with them, I'm constantly sifting to seek advice from people who I think are brilliant people to bring back to them. And, you know, I'm going to this context of like, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. I wonder for you all, it seems that so much of what you guys talk about and so much of what you guys do actually does reflect on where you guys came from, and actually uses that as seeing yourselves as like gold and valuable, and seeing where you're from is kind of like gold mines, you know. And so what is a piece of advice that you could give to young people to really look at all these things that perhaps they're shameful of? Because that comes across a lot when I work with young people, is them not even really want to even tell their stories for other people because they don't think that their stories are valuable. So like, what is a piece of advice that you could give to young people to really look at themselves and where they come from and see that as like gold, and use that as power to move forward?
I could start. I guess I would just tell them what worked for me. Because when I first got on the mic, I was like super nervous, and you know, it was all about telling my story, things that I wrote. And something I do is when I talk to kids, I'll give inspirational speaking engagements, and I'll tell them, you know, like that first time I got on the mic, like I was like the quietest person in my whole high school probably, and I mean literally, you know what I mean, because I went to like 25, 30 different schools. I was on the move, and I became introverted. So I was like, you know, so I came from that to now where I'm speaking to large groups of people, performing in front of large groups of people, just telling my story, being myself for the most part, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, you know, like I thought that I wasn't important back in those depressed days and things like that, but then you realize, you tell your story, and there's like so many countless people who relate to it, and who are like, yo man, when you said this or when you did that, it like really inspired me to do this, you know, like prayers in a song. I've heard a few people say, you know, that made me want to go and learn my language. So it's like, okay, you know, it's like, yeah, we are like gold, we're valuable, our stories are valuable, especially when we share them, you know, we gotta share them though.
More recently I've been going into high schools and sharing my life story much more in depth than I did here, because like these guys, you know, I went through it all, almost committed suicide. And for most of my life, I didn't think my story was important, or my music or my art was worth anything. And I tell these kids what I realized about 3 years ago, and it was a really revolutionary act to realize that I deserve to be happy, healthy, loved, and respected. You know, you deserve to be loved, and you deserve to be healthy. And sometimes these kids, well, a lot of times these kids don't hear that because we're coming up in systems where we're taught to hate ourselves, hate our hair, hate our skin, hate our communities, hate our history, because that's what the system needed in order for it to be put into place. And also realize that each of us has a gift inside of us, whatever that may be. Ours is music. Talon's is music, as well as bringing people together. Cinnamon has the gift of beating, gift of poetry. We all have that gift inside of us, whatever it may be, and find it and do it, you know, no matter what. And realize that you deserve to be loved and happy and healthy and respected. You do, you know, and that will emulate and spread to people around you.
Also would like to add that a lot of prayer too would definitely be encouraged to definitely pray a lot. I encourage that. I mean, sometimes youth or people don't believe in God, but that's touchy subject, but I would just encourage them to pray if they're connected to their spirituality or some type of roots, partake in those ceremonies to help reconnect you. And I feel like God, or the Creator, the Most High, will definitely help guide you. If you meet the Creator halfway, the Creator will be there to help you the other half of the way. So I just encourage any future youth just to follow their dreams and follow their heart. Do what their heart tells them. School didn't really cater to cats like me and Wake. Well, we still we followed our hearts, and followed our dreams, and this is where we are today. I would help say that to them.
These brothers mainly touch base on everything, you know. I personally feel like sometimes the school systems, they teach us, like condition us to think the wrong way about ourselves, you know. They condition us to see differences as a bad thing. Like they show, we got the problems on the board and it's like, the right answer is you pick which one of these is wrong, you know what I mean? And it's like, why are you showing us, teaching us how to think, to find out what is wrong, you know what I mean? And to judge, like we shouldn't be conditioned that way, you know what I mean? And I just like to tell kids, just appreciate your differences. What makes you different is, you know, like the most beautiful thing, you know what I mean? And to be different is great. Like, you just really gotta believe in yourself. I always tell kids, sometimes it's hard, especially when you aspire for something that's really different, you know? When I was aspiring for what I'm doing, there wasn't many people that had my back, you know what I mean? Even your parents, they might not get it at first, you know what I mean? And eventually my moms and my father and my family had my back, but at first it was tough, you know what I mean? And I felt like I was the only one in my corner, but you really just have to believe in yourself and surrender yourself to showing the world who you are, like, and being different, you know what I mean? And if you be yourself, you know, you never know where it could take you, you know, just be yourself.
One more question.
My question is, what would be your advice to an upcoming music artist that wants to be at the same place that you guys are at, but every time when they try to write or they try to further their career, they're discouraged by the trials and tribulations in their lives, and every time they try to get the words out and try to put it onto paper, they can never do it, but they only do it at certain times. And they just get discouraged whenever they see other artists, you know, getting their shine, and they're like, when am I ever going to get my shine? What would your advice be to those type of artists?
So right off the bat, understand that there's not limited spaces at the top for people of color and artists. We can all be successful in our own right. You see someone at top and, oh, I want that, why do they have it? No, you can make your own path. You know, success is relative in whatever you want. And also understand, for me, my creativity, like, it isn't a switch. I'll have writer's block for like a week, you know, and then sometimes it just hits and it flows, and other times it's more of a pain and a process, you know. So creativity doesn't, for me, doesn't just, you know, it doesn't happen every time I want it to. And also, if you just doing it because you love it, you know, stay true to that, stay true to the love, and don't, because I almost quit making music so many times, you know, because I'm coming from one of the poorest counties in the nation, in the middle of nowhere. There was, like Talon said, there was no music scene. Sitting there performing for 5-10 people in dirt lots for 4 or 5 years, and you're like, when is this ever gonna pop? But I loved it, you know, and I would get discouraged and almost quit. But it was just mentors around me that say, no, you know, we see something in you. So finding mentors, and if you do it because you love it, just keep doing it because you love it. And people saying that, they don't understand that love that you have. And just also understand that you can define your own terms of success. Who says what success is? It's what you make it, you know? Yeah,
I think you gotta, like, learn to not compare yourself with other people, you know what I mean? Like, you should be happy that other people are shining, you know what I mean? It's not about wanting to get what somebody else has or wanting to be where somebody else is. Because if you're really being yourself, then there's already a path laid out for you, you know what I mean? For you to you just gotta accept it first, you know what I mean? And if you really love something, it takes a lot, you know, you go up and down. You don't just wake up Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? Like, Michael Jordan was in the gym like hours and hours and hours, you know what I mean? And all that stuff that nobody sees is what makes your art honorable, you know what I mean? How much commitment you put into it, and you just gotta stay committed and focus, you know what I mean? And have a vision. And even if, like, things throw you down, you know what I mean? When you get up, like, you could rock 5 people, and then one day when you rock like 50 people, you'd be like, man, that feels good, you know what I mean? You rock 500 people, it's like, you learn to appreciate it because where you came from, you know what I mean? And you build up to certain points, you know what I mean? And you just have to stay committed and be true to yourself, you know?
Yeah, definitely. If you stay true to yourself, keep grinding, like 1 can turn to 5, 5 can turn to 10. Before you know it, if you've practiced so much, yeah, 10 could turn to 20. Next thing you know, you'll have like 50 to 100 people at your show. But it does take a lot of hard work and dedication in terms of writer's block. I encourage other artists to freestyle. Just like, don't even worry about writing yet. Don't worry about none of that. Just put a beat on and freestyle to that and just let it go, because that can spark some creativity there. As far as the writing process and getting like blocks and stuff when you're trying to come up with words, I've been trying to find my inspiration that helps during those times. And what helps for me is when I know the terms in my head right now, but what I'm trying to say is I'll take a drive and put some music on and not even focus about the writing. I'll just focus about driving and getting to where I'm going. In New Mexico, there's plenty of open space. You could drive anywhere. So I'll take a trip by myself, and when I'm by myself, I allow myself to hit repeat on that beat again. No one's around to get tired of that beat, because if you love that beat, find a beat you love, or find a sound that you love and keep playing that until something happens. And sometimes you have to be by yourself and focus on other things, not what you're doing right at the moment, and that'll come to you. And so that helps me when I'm like having writer's block, or freestyling as well, just blabbering if you have to. Even if it's not good, who cares? It's a freestyle, so just have fun. It's another thing too, don't get too discouraged and just have a good time. Always give props to the next man and just be there for each other. And it's a little advice I could give. Thank you though. Good question.
Yeah, just kind of reiterate what they were saying. Because I mean, there's been times in my craft where I felt like giving up and where I felt like not doing it anymore. And there's been times when I've been frustrated because I didn't feel like I was getting the recognition I felt I deserved. And you know, what's helped me best is just like, you know what, I'm not gonna focus on those negatives. It's like you gotta be yourself, because that's why the people who appreciate my music, they appreciate it because I'm being myself. They're like, you know, personal things in your life related to me that you talked about. And then I try to make it a conscious practice of giving props to the next people, like showing mad love, like promoting other artists and being like, yo man, shout out to my homie such and such. He's down at South by Southwest doing it right now. You know what I mean? It's like I try to show love and make people feel good, you know what I mean? And it's like you get your mind in a place where you're just thinking positives and showing love, and then it's like just, I don't know, it's just good for you, you know?
And just to, give some round of applause. And I can say, because I'm nowhere near the level of these guys, but when it comes to like this event and stuff,
You drop a 51-track album. Wow, it's like 12 tracks.
I can say, you know, you can ask Rafi, who's working the camera here, he's my roommate. There'll be so many nights where, you know, he'll come in at like, you know, kind of late in the night, and I'm just sitting there watching anime, and like, for more than one reason actually. For one reason, you know, because I like anime and I'm a nerd, but the second reason, like, I'm trying to find something to put in a song, and because of a lot of things I'm passionate about, including like these artists, and whether it's like sifting through video game soundtrack after video game soundtrack, getting inspired, or reading books written about, you know, some of the artists I really care about. Like, you know, I could spend all night just like dissecting the stuff that Tupac said in the poems that were put in The Rose That Grew from Concrete, which, you know, it's a really good book. And because of that, I spent a lot of my time alone, you know, and a lot of times it'll get like depressing, because like I'm here in college and like in a big city compared to when, you know, I was in solitude in the country back home and no one was seeing me, and it's almost the same situation, it feels like sometimes. And like, I'll release albums, and like, you know, this recent project was probably, is the best receptive wise, you know, album that I've done, but that's because it had like 23 downloads on it. And that's like less people than who are in here, you know? And that in some cases, you know, I start thinking like, oh, you know, I just need to, you know, stop doing it or whatever. It's only costing me things and this and that. But then I look back and like, I think about things like this that come from it, and like the fact that, you know, I can, you know, now call Talon Wake a friend and like an older brother, and I can, you know, look at Def and Frank still as an older brother, and, you know, have these conversations and help them shine in the ways that I can and utilize those resources like that. Is worth it. You know, those nights where I'm in my room alone, you know, just working with a beat or writing about something that I don't think that anyone will understand even. It is worth it. And the feeling I have right now where, you know, these guys are dropping so much good knowledge and in a positive way, it is worth it. So if we could, you know, let's give another round of applause. So that's the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everybody for coming out here. I want to thank all of our sponsors, everybody that made this a possibility. Lucy, Valerie, Jackie up there, Vanessa, all of our artists, you know, please come see us in T-minus 2 hours, 8 o'clock. We have Penn students performing, opening up, including myself. And then we got these guys headlining, you know, it's going to be a real fun vibe, you know. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you very much.